We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
Tonight, we renew our resolve that America will never be a socialist country.
Congress, President Obama, can you hear us now?
I, for one, am bound and determined to keep this republic, and I know you are too. I will never give up. We can never give up.
Patriots, stand with us and fight for freedom. Fight for our Constitution. Fight with us for the rights endowed by our Creator. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Fight for a better future.
We're going to keep fighting. We will not stop until we get to the bottom of this.
The battle for America's soul rages on. A wide-open southern border, crippling national debt, the constant onslaught of wokeism and creeping socialism, and the weaponization of government agencies against the people. Keeping our republic is on the line, and it requires patriots with great passion, dedication, and eternal vigilance to preserve our freedoms. Jenny Beth Martin is the co-founder of Tea Party Patriots. She is an author, a filmmaker, and one of Time Magazine's most influential people in the world. But the title she is most proud of is mom to her boy-girl twins. She has been at the forefront, fighting to protect America's core principles for more than a decade. Welcome to the Jenny Beth Show.
In the last episode of the Jenny Beth Show, I sat down with former Trump economist Steve Moore and finance guru Bill Walton to talk about bank bailouts and the debt ceiling. Today, we continue the conversation and discuss things like central bank digital currency, or CBDC, how wokeism is destroying capitalism, and the real struggle of small business owners to survive in this economy. Well, Steve and Bill, thank you so much for being with me today. Earlier in the beginning of the conversation, you talked about, and we kind of glossed over it, I want to unpack this a bit, CBDC. Central bank digital currency, and the concerns about that. Explain what that is and why people really should be concerned, and that it's not really a tinfoil hat thing that some people might think.
Well, your eyes glaze over and you think CBDC. Maybe that's a rock club in downtown Manhattan. But it's not. It's something quite sinister. And what it is essentially is that instead of banking with your local bank or even one of the big banks, you end up with a bank account at the Federal Reserve or some affiliate of the Federal Reserve. And so the Federal Reserve is no longer the lender of last resort, but it's the primary provider of financial services. And what that means is that all of our financial services are essentially provided by the federal government. And now there are lots of different mechanisms how to bring it back, but I don't think the essence is, once they get control of that, they can control where the money, they know what's in there, and B, they know what you're spending it on, and C, they can block spending. And they rolled out a credit card 2 years ago in Davos that said, this is a great credit card. It'll monitor your carbon footprint.
Oh my goodness,
and
that's crazy.
I thought that was crazy joke. And I got an email promotion from American Express, which is, by the way, part of the woke empire, saying your credit card is now outfitted so you personally can monitor your carbon footprint.
But not just you; they can monitor it, and the government.
By the way, yeah, we'll help you. We'll help you. We're here. We're the federal government. We're here to help you monitor. So they're taking advantage, and this is the thing where people. Myron Ebel joke about this thing. Republicans are all sort of light green. They sort of nod. Oh yeah, we sort of want to be green. That's extremely dangerous. You got to really toe the line to fight that stuff. But the CBDC we don't know how it's going to play out, but that's essentially what would happen. And a lot of those 5,000 regional banks, small banks, well, they're not going to be viable in that system, and so you'll end up banking with the government.
And this, of course, is why there's a war in Washington and at the Federal Reserve against cryptocurrencies, because that's a competitor to the government having control of the money supply. I'm not going to recommend or not recommend, having cryptocurrencies, but the idea of having a non-government controlled currency is a good thing, not a bad thing. But I guarantee you that the government's going to try to run them out of business.
Steve, do you think we could ever get back to gold?
You mean, what do you mean by that?
To back our money. We're on Richard Nixon's money plan right now. When he threw out what did he throw out? Bretton Woods?
Well, Steve Forbes is a big fan of that. I'd love to see some. I do think the dollar has to be anchored to something. And the idea that the Federal Reserve just makes it up as they go along is very economically destabilizing.
I heard some of the Senate Democrat leadership recently in a press conference say that increasing the debt ceiling, it's just a matter of paying our bills. Right. And those who are against it just don't want to pay their bills. What would you say to that, and how would you counter that argument?
You're not going to get an increase in your credit card limit until you come up with a plan to get us out of debt, period. End of argument.
Right.
And if Biden wants to, and by the way, would it be the end of the world if we didn't, let's just assume that Biden sticks with his thing. I'm not going to negotiate this. Okay. So then at some point we reach where we're reaching the debt limit. Does that mean that we have to not default on our debt? No. The government has money coming in every day. It would be like a de facto balanced budget. Here's the idea, you could only spend as much as you bring in. Oh, gee, that's what every business and household does.
Right.
What a concept. So what would that mean? You're going to have to prioritize. Well, what's the top priority? As I understand it, the creditors have the first claim on the money, so you pay the bonds, right?
In the good old days, yeah.
Then so you pay your Social Security, then you pay your Medicare, then whoops, we don't have enough money for the Department of Education this month. Would that be a disaster?
That probably would be.
Good
save America.
So come on. So why is Janet Yellen running around the country trying to scare people?
Well, the argument they have to what they say, you had 17 Republican senators who voted for the Inflation Reduction Act.
Shame on them.
But that's what we've got, people who are playing for the other side. Yeah. And so it's hard because, in fact, Mitt Romney was part of the group that said, we ought to spend this extra money. Yeah. And, I think over half of the money in the so-called Inflation Reduction Act went to the climate lobby.
It's such a
problem. If I sound like a one-note person here, I'm very concerned about because it's going to wreck the economy in addition to wrecking our budget.
Well, it is going to wreck the economy. And if we actually want to expand our economy and grow businesses here, I think we need fewer regulations, not more regulations, so that businesses could potentially manufacture in America again. You can't manufacture when you have OSHA and the EPA and so many regulations that it creates an unbalanced playing field if you're trying to manufacture in America versus China.
One of the reasons manufacturing was driven out of the United States.
Yeah. Here's the thing. This is a good example. So we had a bipartisan bill that passed Congress in the last week or two on this water. If you have standing water, if you have a puddle on your land, you know this because you got it. If you have a puddle on your land that's federally regulated, and you build something, they can come in and put you in jail for, what about this little stream here, And so if everybody realizes this is craziness, and so the Congress, even the Democrats, agreed to repeal this rule so we can develop our land and create jobs, and Biden's going to veto that bill.
Of course,
he's going to veto it. Yeah. I don't even. If I were on your land, I'd be afraid to build anything. They're going to come. They're going to put you in jail. They're going to put you in handcuffs and take. I'm serious. You think that you're laughing?
I'm on the side of a mountain. I have excellent defensive perimeter. I'm not going to go into details. But
no, but I have a lot of friends who live in rural Virginia. They have a little stream, running through their property, and they're terrified. That the EPA is going to say, you blocked this stream or whatever it is, and this is just really a dangerous situation. And my friend who runs this group Open the Books, I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Yes.
Unpronounceable last name.
Do you know how much weapons these federal agencies have? I'm not talking about the FBI. I'm not talking about the Secret Service. I'm talking about the Environmental Protection Agency, the IRS, the HHS. Why do they need weapons?
And it's not just weapons. It's a military. they're military grade weapons. It's not just like a gun that they might have on a holster. It's military grade weapons. China doesn't have the same kind of regulations. So if you want to make a battery in China and it harms the environment to manufacture it, you can. You can't do that here, but you can there.
Well, Jennifer Granholm, our Secretary of Energy,
who knows nothing about energy,
was praising China's work in reducing carbon emissions.
No, she wasn't.
China's building a coal plant every week. They're doing nothing except sort of giving head pats to Jennifer Granholm. I mean, how do we end up with these blithering idiots in all these cabinet positions?
DEI,
I mean,
diversity, equity, and inclusion, executive order from 2021.
He's a transportation expert.
Oh, have you heard the federal government has told airlines they need to reduce their flights over the summer by 10% because they can't get enough air traffic controllers, thanks to Buttigieg.
Well, that's affirmative action.
I'm sure it is. And
they've given, they stopped administering competency tests for air traffic controllers, and instead they're doing personality profile interviews, and they want to see if people have got the right personality profile. They're not asking them about their algebra skills or their computational skills. It's a personality test.
When I'm in the air, I don't care what the personality is, as long as they mathematically can get me back down on the ground.
That's why what you're doing here with the show, what we're all trying to do, I think the more this is not getting reported anywhere in the mainstream media, that you're not going to hear this. And so I think when the normal people hear about all the bad stuff that's going on, I think we can get the political act together and actually win some elections. But it's worse than people imagine when you get into I'm driving down Independence Avenue to come down to visit you, and I drive past the Capitol and I look at all these kind of really unattractive people going in and out of the Capitol building, and they're all lobbyists.
Yes.
And they're all people parading in and out of these buildings, all in Washington, try to get something.
I visited a member of Congress who was on the Appropriations Committee.
Must be very popular.
During like a debt ceiling battle or something like that. And he was never going to do what I wanted, but I was sort of trying to figure out what is it that the more squishy Republicans were thinking, just so I would have a better understanding. And he or his staffer, I think it was a staffer, but he agreed with his staffer. He said, "We just don't know what to do with you because you are the only people who come in here and ask for nothing and tell us you want us not to spend money." I'm like, that's pretty easy. Just stop spending money. But because I wouldn't ask for anything, they didn't know how to handle me.
John Kyle, I think, is a good guy, but he invited me to his PAC outing down in Miami to go to the NASCAR races. He was a lawyer for NASCAR, and he's a big NASCAR fan. It was great to go down there. And I was down there for about 35 people, and I was not I'm a private sector guy. And on Sunday morning, he actually came up to me at about 11 o'clock. He said, so why are you down here? And I said, well, I'm for good judges and limited government and low taxes and free America. He said, well, we got a transportation bill that's coming out next week. Don't you have anything you want in that bill? Everybody else here has got something.
Yeah.
And he wasn't being cynical. He was just being candid about what was really going on. It's all very transactional. Everybody here has got something they want to get in the bill, something they want to get for their industry. And what's that, Steve, what's that economic term where it's rent seeking and you've got concentrated interests against diffused people, and we got all these concentrated interests in Washington, whether it's the climate lobby or the light bulb manufacturers. They're special interests. They're highly specialized, and if they can get 2 lines or 3 lines in the big bills that nobody reads, they win.
Right.
And I don't know. I think we may need to start a tea party or something like that to stop
like
them.
That. That's what we're trying to do. And I think it's important that people understand these issues. I think we've got an issue right now today with people who are activists versus what we had when the Tea Party movement first started. When we first started, going viral was a brand new thing on the internet. Like, it didn't happen every single day. Now we're in a and so our call to action for having a tax day tea party went viral, and we were able to get a lot of people to come out and take action on it. Now we're in a situation where people go viral every 5 minutes online.
Yeah.
You know, there's a video and you get 1 million views on this and 100,000 here and 200,000 there. And what's happening, I think, is there's such an information overload with all of the bad things that a lot of people are just going, I don't know how to make a difference.
Yeah.
And what I'm trying to do partly with these podcasts is elaborate on some of the issues a little bit more, rather than the 5 seconds or the 30 seconds you get on the news, or the 60 or 90 seconds you get on Twitter or Instagram, and delve into the issues a little bit more. And then in the next 20 months, all of us as citizens and activists are going to have to engage politically in the elections and work to make a difference, because we cannot continue to have the incompetent people who meet the right diversity, equity, and inclusion checkbox running our government and destroying our country.
You know, maybe the president's press secretary.
Yes.
There's they talk all the time about diversity, and we did this study at the Committee to Unleash Prosperity that came out about 6 months ago. We just looked at the top 75 people in the Biden administration who deal with the economics, finance, business, transportation, energy, starting with the top, Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, then his cabinet officials. And you know what the median number of years of business experience of these people is?
I'm afraid
Zero.
You know.
Zero. And now, so that means they're either community activists, they're lawyers, they are government, people who spent their whole life in government, or university professors. And these are people who couldn't run a lemonade stand.
Right.
Right. And it wasn't, people always say, well, how did that happen? It wasn't like an oversight. They don't want people who know anything about government. About business. Yeah. They don't want people, because they think businessmen like Bill Walton are sinister.
Right.
And so, is it surprising that we've got these results? Donald Trump, I have a great personal affection for him. I think he did a lot of great things I think he was a great president in a lot of ways. But a lot of the stuff he did was just common sense,
Right.
But he just understood. He had a businessman's framework. I guarantee you, these people in the White House today, they regard business as the enemy. Well, as my old boss Dick Armey used to say, without businesses, you don't have jobs. That should be self-evident, but they don't understand
jobs are not
that.
a bad thing. Having a job is not a bad thing. I think that there are many on the left who think somehow that having a job is a bad thing. Doing hard work, like physically demanding type work, is looked down upon.
Or any work. The left has been demonizing work of all kinds forever. And that's the problem, is that they demonize work. And if you do have one of these jobs in a McDonald's, that you're a terrible person because you're not doing. I guess you're not doing political. You're being exploited. Political activism. Yeah, it's a big problem.
And I think that there's a very good visual example of the lack of experience that people in his administration and cabinet have, and that's when Pete Buttigieg went to East Palestine.
I thought you meant when he went on his parental leave or something for 9 months in the middle of a transportation crisis.
That too, but almost everything he does. But just watching him on the video while he was there, he looked so uncomfortable walking around an area where it was dirty and there was a real problem, and there were people in need.
Dukakis moment in
it
the
really
tank.
Was.
Yeah.
He just looked. He looked so out of place. Like he didn't even know how.
That's why those people in places like East Palestine voted for Trump. Trump was truly the blue-collar, middle-class president. And they are the party of the rich. They are. The Democrats are not. The wealthiest counties in the United States went overwhelmingly for Biden. They didn't go for Trump.
Silicon Valley Bank.
Yeah.
It's the rich people, and it's the leftists who support the Democrat policies who are.
Is it liberal guilt? What is it? You're pretty rich yourself, so why is it all your colleagues are liberals?
We all went to Yale.
Well, that's probably part of it.
We can't overlook.
But do they feel guilty? No, do they feel guilty about having so much money?
They do.
Yeah.
Well, and most of them didn't earn it themselves. What I don't mean that they shouldn't have it, but maybe they didn't build the businesses.
But the ones in Silicon Valley did.
Yeah, that's true.
And it's a mystery of the universe why they want to wreck society, wreck the economy in order to atone for their sins. They're not committing any sins. I mean, right. I've always hated this term "giving back" because I thought if you're running a good business, you're giving a lot to society right there. Sure. And so, this is the question Sarah and I, my wife, we talk about almost every day about how can these people believe what they believe?
Yes.
I mean, it's astonishing, and yet they're in that tribe, and that tribe rewards that behavior. And of course, let's not forget that a lot of this diversity, equity, and inclusion, money that goes to it, who's it go to? Consultants, consulting firms. They're huge contracts. The diversity consultant or DEI head at Ford Motor Company is getting paid almost $1 million a year. And if you talk about climate's a good thing. Well, I've talked about this. There are trillions of dollars going into it. So they're getting rewarded for their, quote, virtue. And so they've turned this virtue into a business. And there's a CRT.
Like Al Gore, right?
Like Al Gore.
I mean, there's a
CRT industry. There's a DEI industry.
There's an emerging environmental social governance industry.
Exactly.
They're teaching that in colleges now.
I know.
And how to measure.
I can't imagine. I went to business school. I can't imagine being in business school now, because they have all those there, all those courses there.
And that's that's one thing that really alarms me at the moment about ESG. People are beginning to understand, at least be familiar with the term. By the time we understood what was going on with diversity, equity, and inclusion and critical race theory and critical social justice theory, it had already been taught in colleges for over a decade. And so the people who had been taught the theory were now acting on the theory in their professions. The same thing is happening right now with ESG, but I think we're at the beginning of it, but there are textbooks about it. So it's being taught in colleges. We need to find a way to head that off before we have another generation of kids or another 10 years worth of kids who are just completely indoctrinated with it, and then they go run businesses with that, because we will have businesses failing left and right if that is how you run your business.
Well, luckily those people are too stupid to be able to run a business, but it's it's imposed upon them, and it is. I'll give one piece of advice to your viewers and listeners, because I know you have people of all income ranges. It would help if all of our conservative donors just never gave another penny to a university. I mean, why are we putting money into the hands of our enemies? It's I think about people like my dad, who was not political. He's a successful businessman, and he gave a couple $1 million to Northwestern University. A, the last thing Northwestern University needs is $2 million, and B, that they're one of the most liberal places. They're anti-America. So I get so frustrated with so many of our conservative donors do that, and just stop giving money to universities. They can't be saved. Now, there are a few good ones, like, the school in Michigan.
Hillsdale.
But not that many. So sometimes we're inadvertently arming our enemies, and then we've got to stop doing that.
Absolutely. Okay, before we go, Steve, when I saw you and saw lectures with you, maybe they weren't lectures, but you were doing presentations during the Trump administration. I just remember you pointing to a curve that was going up, and you had a huge smile on your face, and you were very positive and optimistic. And things are bad right now, and we've talked about how bad they are throughout this episode. Do you have confidence that if we have the right leadership, we can turn this around?
I mean, America, we'll get through this crisis. It's just that, every year we wait, we're in a big ditch right now. We keep digging. Okay.
Right.
First, stop digging. Right? Stop spending more money. Stop paying people not to work. Stop doing stupid things. Stop printing money. And so, if we had a Donald Trump or Ron DeSantis or a Kim Reynolds or someone like that, I think we could bring an end to this quickly. And America's incredibly resilient. I mean, look how fast after 3 terrible presidents, Nixon, Ford, and Carter, Reagan came in, and it took him 18 months, but he cleaned the whole thing up, and we had a boom. So I do believe in America, and I do believe that, as Reagan said, that it was divine providence who put America here as a beacon of freedom. One thing that really worries me, I don't know if you saw the poll in the Wall Street Journal. In 25 years, half as many Americans are religious, half as many Americans are patriotic, and half as many Americans want a family, as was the case 25 years ago. And so what we've done, and I don't want to end this on a negative point, but if this continues, we are basically, look, if you don't believe in country, God, or family, you start believing in the pagan god of big government.
That's correct. So we have to just make sure that as part of what we're doing, we're educating people on the value of our values and the importance of self-reliance and of family and of God
and the free enterprise system.
And absolutely, I think that's one of the most important things that we can do.
They're not teaching that in the schools today. None of that.
No, they are not. But we can, and we are, and we have to continue to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Jenny Beth. Good to be with you.
Well, thank you
Your
so
words
much.
of wisdom
Thank
are
you very
fantastic.
much, Steve, and thank you, Bill. Thank you so much for being with me. Do you have any websites you want to let people know about?
I want everybody to get our Committee to Unleash Prosperity hotline. We are combating inflation by providing that for free to people, so it costs you nothing. Just go to the Committee to Unleash Prosperity website and sign up for that, and we'll be getting it to you every morning. And you can read it in 5 minutes every morning, but I think people will really get a lot of value out of it.
It's an excellent,
Thank you.
Excellent email. And Bill, what about you? You've got a podcast yourself.
I do. It's the BillWaltonShow.com, and we're on Substack and YouTube and Rumble and all the major podcast platforms, and we've done about 220 shows so far, including you.
Yes.
You were great. You're coming back on.
I would love
and
to.
And Steve's been on a couple of times. I get all our fellow travelers. But what we're doing is exactly what you're doing right now. Is we want to take a topic and go deep into it so you can know how to talk about it to be an advocate. And it's not particularly red meat, but we're very firm about what works and what doesn't work.
Right.
And what's moral and what's not moral. And, the other side's great, except what they want to do. All they want to do is take our freedom, our money, and our dignity. That's all they want.
And we cannot let this
and we
go.
can't let that happen. So it's a show that's not, we're not yelling at you, but on the other hand, we've got a really firm view about what works and what doesn't work. And I think all three of us are on common ground on that one.
Absolutely. Well, thank you both so much for being with me today.
Yeah, it's fun.
Thank you. And I am Jenny Beth Martin. This is the Jenny Beth Show. Thanks for joining us. I really enjoyed the conversation with Steve Moore and Bill Walton, and I hope you did too. Clearly, we have some major problems that we need to fix in our economy and in our country. If you want to stay informed on these issues, please subscribe to the podcast so you will know every time we post a new episode. Together, we can take meaningful action that will help put our country back on the path to prosperity.
The Jenny Beth Show is hosted by Jenny Beth Martin, produced by Kevin Mooneyhan, and directed by Luke Livingston. The Jenny Beth Show is a production of Tea Party Patriots Action. For more information, visit teapartypatriots.org.
If you enjoyed this episode and want to stop freedom thieves from turning our country into a communist nightmare, be sure to click the thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. And while you're at it, click the notifications bell to get an alert every time we post a new episode.